Heart, discipline, loyalty. Earn the right to wear the dragon doji.
Ninja Turtles 1990, the best Turtles movie and, in my opinion, a cinematic masterpiece. In this video, I want to take a look at what old Turtles comics did this movie pull from, as one of the things you always hear regarding this film is that it's one of the best comic book to film adaptations ever made. So what stories or elements from the comic books were adapted? That's what we're going to take a look at today. We'll see what they kept the same, what they changed, and what other stories or moments from those old comics that they didn't use but could have worked as well. So let's waste no time and dive right in and take a look. Let's begin with issue 1 of the original black and white Mirage comics. At the beginning of this issue, the Turtles beat up the purple dragons in an alleyway, leaving them for the cops, and they themselves disappear into the sewers. This is very similar to the opening scene of the movie. Major difference here really is that the people they beat up in the movie are not the purple dragons, and instead members of the Foot Clan. Now, in the comic, just like in the movie, the Turtles leave and go home and tell their master about their victory. But instead of hanging out afterwards like they do in the movie, instead, in the books, they are given a mission by their master to go kill the Shredder. Comic book version of Splinter was not messing around when it came to Shredder. Another thing that's similar in that first movie that comes from the original books is the telling of Splinter's origin, being a pet of his master and learning his moves from his cage, although in the comics he tells the story to the Turtles instead of Danny, which is what he does in the movie. And there are some differences in the story, biggest one being in the comics, Hamato Yoshi kills Oroku Saki's older brother, Oroku Nagi, because he was brutally hitting Tang Shen one day out of jealousy. This, in the original comics, sent a young Oroku Saki down a dark path that eventually turned him into the Shredder, where there, just like in the movie, Shredder tracked down Yoshi in New York and killed him in Tangshan. During this struggle is when Splinter was released from his cage, just like in the movie, and him and the Turtles came together in a very similar fashion. Although we don't see all the details in the movie, it is very similar when looking at the comic book adaptation of the film. But everything you do see in the movie is pretty much the same. Splinter finds the Turtles in the ooze, gathers them in a coffee can, and they all begin to mutate, so all very familiar. In issue 1, Shredder also seems to have some type of warehouse compound like he does in the movie. Although in the book, we see a side of Oroku Saki we don't see in the film. A more businessman type persona who appears to be strong-arming local business people to buy protection from him, like a mob boss. In the book, Raphael throws a sign with a note attached into Oroku Saki's office, challenging him to a duel with the 4 Turtles, which is obviously different from the movie, but it does set up a similar rooftop final fight. First, the Turtles make their way through a horde of foot soldiers like in the film, and eventually face off against the Shredder, where he gets knocked off of the building to his death. Although, unlike the film, in issue number 1, Shredder got knocked off by Donatello's bow instead of Splinter, which is how the movie did it. And also, Shredder was about to use a thermite grenade on the Turtles, which ended up falling down with him, blowing him up to pieces down below on the ground. This all obviously very different than him falling into the garbage truck and getting smashed by the garbage compactor.
Oops!
Next, let's jump into issue 2. This came out October of 1984. Now, April's portrayal in the movie is a lot different than it is in the comic. The movie made her a reporter like in the 1987 cartoon. In the comic, we see in issue number 2, she is Baxter Stockman's lab assistant, although her introduction to the Turtles in issue 2 is somewhat similar to that of the movie. Although instead of Raphael saving her from a gang of foot soldiers in the subway like is done in the film, the Turtles save her when her association with Baxter Stockman goes sideways and he drops her into the sewers and sends a bunch of mousers after her. She ends up fainting when the Turtles say hello to her, and they take her to their den the way Raphael does in the movie. When she wakes up, Splinter tries to calm her down the way he does in the film, properly introducing them all. The rest of issue 2 doesn't really have much in common with the movie, as the Turtles deal with the mousers from then on out. Now jumping into issue 3 of the original black and white Mirage comics, this was released in March of 1985. In issue 3, the Turtles are seen returning home now that they are done with their Mousers encounter, when they see that their home has been broken into and Splinter has been taken. The way this is drawn looks very similar to the way it was shot in the 1990 movie, albeit the ones that took Splinter in the movie was the Foot Clan, and in the book you can see that Splinter was overrun by Mousers. Raphael goes out on his own after this. This is another element that is reflected in the movie in a couple spots, although in the book he meets back up with the Turtles shortly after. We also see in issue 3 that the Turtles end up staying at April's apartment after their den has been compromised. Her apartment is above the second time around shop just like in the movie. One of the things they ask for when they first arrive is for some beer. Also in issue 3, we see that April drives a very similar van that she does in the movie as well. Next, we jump into the Raphael Micro Series #1. These were issues that revolved around specific characters that came out around the same time the original comics were coming out, and that were part of the same storyline. In the Raphael Micro Series, which came out April of 1985, we see that Raphael goes out on his own after almost killing Michelangelo during training. Now obviously this doesn't happen in the movie, but what happens to Raph while he's out does happen in the movie. He sees a hockey mask wearing vigilante beating the crap out of a bunch of criminals, and Raphael intervenes very similarly to the way he does in the movie. The two have a back and forth squabble where Casey does his line that he also does in the movie, calling out 4 as he hits Raphael with a golf club, although some of these elements were rearranged in the film. Raphael proceeds to chase Casey Jones like he does in the movie, but instead of getting away, Raphael is able to stop him, telling him that he needs to tone it down or that he could end up killing somebody. This is when the two hear a mugging going on nearby, and then they go off to handle it together, so a little different than how they became friends in the movie, with Casey helping them get out of April's apartment.
You guys mind telling me what you're doing, my little green pal over there?
The Leonardo Micro Series book, which came out in December of 1986, has a big moment in it that is very reminiscent of some scenes in the 1990 film. The Ninja Turtles are lightheartedly setting up Christmas stuff in April's apartment while Leonardo is getting jumped by foot soldiers somewhere nearby, similar to when the Turtles are being given a tour of April's apartment in the movie while Raphael is getting jumped on the roof. Now this is when things get a little bit different from the film. It is revealed in the book, just as Leonardo begins to get beaten badly, that Shredder, who they thought was dead from issue 1, has returned. This is when a bloody and beaten Leonardo gets thrown through April's apartment window, landing in his brother's arms, just like when Raphael got thrown through the skylight in April's apartment in the movie. Not sure which one I prefer more, but I do think it's cool to see their leader Leonardo go down and how the Turtles react without him at full strength. The Leonardo Micro Series sets up issue 10, which was released in April of 1987, so still a ways out from when the 1990 movie came out. The Foot Clan invade April's apartment, just like in the movie. They all fight their way down into the second time around shop below, which looks again very much like the one on screen. Although instead of Tatsu being there, commanding the Foot, we have the Shredder, who has mysteriously returned. And this is when we get Casey, who is hiding in the shadows, pop out and help the team escape. The shop then catches fire just like in the movie, and the Turtles are forced to leave town and head to Casey's family's farmhouse, instead of April's like the film had it. Next, we get some story beats from that farmhouse that resemble ones from the film. This is in issue 11, which came out June of 1987. The Turtles, April, and Casey are now at the farmhouse, and here we have April writing about everyone's experiences. We even see Donatello and Casey fixing an old truck, like we do in the film. One of the differences being, though, about this sequence is that all the farmhouse sequences in these old comics have Splinter being around, as he was already reunited with the Turtles at this point in the story. The Turtles train there for a while until they're eventually ready to go back to New York. Which brings us to issue 19, which was released in March of 1989. Now this is already so close to the movie coming out. At this point, the film would have been very close to starting production, if not already in production. And with that being said, you don't get that many parallels from this book or any of the ones after. The only few things I see here from this issue is obviously from the title of this story arc, the Turtles return to New York, like they do in the film. Although the way they do it here in the book is different. Raphael gets into a fight with Leonardo back at the farmhouse. He's tired of hiding and wants to go take care of the Foot Clan and the Shredder once and for all. He ends up throwing Leonardo through a wall and heads back to New York alone. Eventually everyone joins him and they all end up at the old den in the sewers. So this is similar to the movie, I guess, as well, when they all return back to their home just before their final fight. But I mean, after this, it seems like the movie's gears were already turning, as I don't see anything in any other of the comics that was pulled for the film. So that about wraps it up. What do you guys think? Were there any other stories you wish they would have adapted from the original books into the movies? I always feel like they could have done more stuff with the 1990 movie Turtles. Would have been cool to see them deal with Baxter Stockman and the Mousers. Also would have been cool to see those 90s Turtles in a City at War story. Don't know if all that cosmic stuff with going to space and fighting Triceratons in Arena would have worked back then, but that could have been also something interesting to see the 90s Turtles deal with. Don't know how the special effects and all that would have looked back then though. Anyways, that about does it for this video. Thank you everybody for watching. Hope you enjoyed this look at the different comics that inspired moments in the 1990 Ninja Turtles movie. Hit subscribe if you're new and follow on all the social media pages, and we'll see you in a little bit with another video. Take care.
Armed.